What's up, Diet Busters? How are you? We have our conundrum. Like sometimes it gives us a 3, 2, 1 countdown, and sometimes it doesn't. Conundrum. That's the word of the day. So how are we today? We are coming at you from pretty snowy Colorado. If this was 20 years ago, this wouldn't be considered that much snow. But kids got a snow day, and that makes for really fun working at home. But it's good. So when you guys jump on, give us hello, give us a hi. We're coming at you with all the questions you had and some things we've observed, some things we've observed this week that we want to chat with you guys about. So first thing, if you guys haven't been doing the survey, hi Julie, make sure you go do the survey every week. We pick one person at random that gets the answer correct, that gets a free one-on-one phone call with us. So today's winner is Kelly Taylor. I want to make sure I got it right. So Kelly, reach out to us and we'll reach out to you. We'll get you the link to set up
part of the group.
Phone call. Thank you guys for being here. Hi Heather. We saw a lot of you guys on Monday in our macros workshop. So if you guys were there, we really appreciate you. It was a super fun night and I think a lot of value was had. So we appreciate you guys' feedback. All right, babe, shall we do this?
Let's do it to it.
Let's do it to it.
All right, so this week you guys didn't get a ton of questions coming through. Hopefully that means that you guys are watching and going back and watching a lot of the lives, so we're not getting a lot of the repeat questions that we've had the last couple weeks. So hopefully that's a good thing. Hopefully you guys are getting a lot out of it, and hopefully you're getting your questions answered. So one of the questions we had regarding... we've seen it, so we kind of posed this question on our own, is just because we've seen a lot of people throwing out foods and stuff that they're eating, but they're incorporating a lot of tuna and a lot of fish, right? And so like those are, those are great protein sources that we highly recommend, right? Like they're really good quality fatty protein sources and fishes that require a lot of omega-3s, a lot of just good fatty acids, a lot of just good solid minerals and nutrients in that coming from that protein source.
I'm gonna back up for a second. Tuna is not fatty. So if you guys are trying your macros, don't freak out. Tuna is not fatty.
Yeah, what I mean by that is people hear fat and they automatically go to like saturated fat and everything else. What I mean by that is omega-3s, like the other elements of what fish has as far as its contents go. With that being said, I had a conversation, kind of a back and forth a little bit with one of the members of the group, and she's also doing our shift 8-week program regarding mercury in fish, and just on the essence of incorporating a lot of fish all the time. Right? Like it can be massively beneficial, but oftentimes due to the water sources, due to the way in which it's raised, whatever the source may be, oftentimes fish also carry a lot of heavy metals around in their system. So it's not, and I'm just want to put out there before people hear this and say that I'm telling you fish is bad and you're going to end up with mercury poison by you having a can of tuna. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying if you are having that essentially every single day, be aware of these things, right? Like, are you having difficulty sleeping? Are you having headaches? Are you having kind of mood swings? Are you having irregular, functions? Like those things are going to be signs and symptoms of potential, right? Like, I don't want you all of a sudden doing, the WebMD search of all of a sudden you end up with like you have a headache after a long stressful day of not eating, and then all of a sudden you go down to the route of I have mercury poison because Brandon said so. No, we're just trying to get you understanding of like if you consume these things in large amounts, the potential does go up. And so oftentimes, depending on the source in which you're getting it from, seeing a lot of people talking or posting canned tuna, those type of things, like albacore, the sources regarding those, depending on the type that you're eating, are usually a little bit lower in mercury and metal count and those type of things. Usually the larger the fish size usually tends to have a little bit more, like swordfish, bluefish, those type of fish tend to carry a lot more mercury with them. So just be aware of it, all right? So it's not just on the sense of what's the calorie count, what's the macro count, but also in addition, how was it raised, right? Like, and this goes to the same thing if you guys are eating beef and meat, right? How was it raised? How was it finished, right? Like, was it grass raised? Was it grass finished? All those things are also going to affect how you digest it, because we talked about this in our macro group the other night of, the saying of you are what you eat. what we believe in, you are not what you essentially eat. You are what you absorb and what you distribute.
And you're eating what you ate, right?
Yes.
And so I think this is it's a good thing to talk about for a second. Two things that I wanted to say. I want to go back to variety, right? Variety is key. Don't get yourself stuck in this like, I always eat tuna, or I always eat chicken, or I always eat fish, or like whatever, because there's just a different array of micronutrients when you have variety, right? So the same thing goes when we're talking about vegetables, right? Getting a variety is always good, okay? So, and it meets one of your needs. So there you go. But we talk about the quality of meat that you're eating. And I know sometimes this gets into a budget play. Trust me, we've gone through this too. But if you really can eat, get organic, grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, there really is a difference in the quality.
Cage-free raised, pasteurized,
exactly.
all those things.
There's a huge difference in the quality, and the quality is also what your body absorbs, how it's going to make you feel. So all of that stuff really does matter. So if it's possible, right, and if you're in a place where financially that doesn't make sense in your life, we get it. But the more you can try to get to that, it does matter. We had a funny conversation that just came to me. We were talking to the butcher at our local Sprouts back in the day. I think it was Sunflower back then. And we had the question about, was it grass-fed beef, right? And so a lot of grass-fed beef is grass-fed, right? Meaning that's what it normally eats. And then it's grain finished. And what the butcher said to us, he's like, yeah, they do. We were like, why do they do grain finish? And he's like, oh, well, they do grain finish to fatten them up. Which made me laugh because we were in a very paleo place right then. And it's like, okay, so if grains help fatten up the cows, what does it probably also do to us? And I'm not saying grains make you fat. Don't take it that way. But like, it was an interesting concept of like, oh, okay, so if their normal diet is grass, and that's what they would eat if they were, if it wasn't on a budget, then they give them grains to fatten them up.
Well, they actually like some of them give them literally terrible. Candy and licorice and all kinds of other things in order, because what that does is increases the marbleization in the meat, increases the fat, like those things. So it's, yet again, we talked about this largely in the macro group regarding going out to eat and going out to dinner and being a little bit more curious as to like the process in which they're cooking your dinner and cooking the things that you're going to consume at a restaurant, right? Like, allow yourself to ask questions, but more importantly, like when you go out to even just your local grocery store, ask those things, right? Like, how was this raised? How was it finished? How are those? Because yet again, what we run into a lot in our shift group that it's part of our 8-week program is we get sold so much, right? We get sold so much on good marketing of this says this, but in reality, it's actually this, right? Like, oh, it's grass raised. Well, if you don't read the fine print of, how was it finished, right? Well, that will be a good difference, right? I've had this conversation with a couple people over the past regarding eggs and allergenic problems. And those things do exist, right? Like, we could have inherently allergenic predisposition to certain things. But my question oftentimes, and that is, well, are you allergic to the egg, or are you allergic to what the chicken ate? Right? Like, are you allergic to maybe the grains, maybe the way it was kept up, right? Like, all those things are also going to affect it, right? Like, yet again, you are like literally your microbiome, what comprises of you in your small intestine, in your gut, and everything else is comprised from the things of literally from the second you were born, whether or not it was a C-section to a vaginal birth, that's going to affect your microbiome development, how you were raised, the environment you're around, whether you're breastfed. All those things are going to dictate a lot of different areas of how you are in basically the form you are in today, right? And so all the things that you take in and consume are also going to affect that on the sense of how it was raised, how it was fed, how it was basically processed or not processed to go through it to basically get from wherever it came from to on your table. So it's being coming from a place of curiosity and awareness, just on the sense of not just looking at, yet again, what your MyFitnessPal or whatever else you're tracking off of is, but really looking at it, okay, what is this source, but what else could it be contributing to?
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Next.
Fiber. So fiber. This is our theme of the week in our 8-week group is essentially fiber. We've seen a lot of people getting better at essentially increasing I'm going to say that again, increasing the amount of food that they're eating.
Maybe not quite there yet.
Not yet quite yet. All right. But we're also incorporating, focusing on getting more fiber in our system. Okay. So the reason why this is important, you guys, and obviously fiber, I think for most of us, we think about like my grandpa eating, like, what was it, prune juice or whatever it was back in the, like those things back in the day, right? For, good dietary function and everything else. Which, by the way, if you are not having like actual dietary like movements naturally throughout the day.
You're not having bowel movements every day.
There's a problem. I can tell you right now, you're having gut distress, and I don't care if you're eating the most organic stuff ever, you're not absorbing it and you're not getting the benefits of it, right? So we want to be able to have regularity in our dietary practices to make sure, yet again, what comes out is a pretty good indication of what's going on inside. And even if it's not coming out, that's also even more of an indication of something going wrong in the system. So, when we're talking about fiber, there's insoluble fiber, there's soluble fiber. Essentially on this, you guys, for most of us, the vast majority of us on a statistical realm do not get anywhere near the amount of fiber that's recommended. Like the recommended, I think RDA is 20 or 25 grams, and that's at a minimum. Like that's the bare minimum of what we want, right? And so the reason why that's important is because for so many of you guys, usually that's also an indication of the quality of food that you're eating. It's going to help yet again with good gut function, good blood sugar regulation, satiation, right? Like how many of you guys feel like you're starving all day long and you can't get food in your system, right? Like that's going to help you have more satiety throughout the day. It's going to help a good hormonal regulation. There's all kinds of other benefits that are going to come along with increasing your fiber intake. One of the questions was, do we have a recommendation as far as, the best fiber sources for little carbohydrates? You want to talk about that?
Sure.
Okay, I like that one.
Brandon all the talking today. That's okay. So the biggest thing, you guys, when I read that question, the answer was like vegetables. All vegetables, you guys, if you look at it, the good majority of the carbohydrates that are coming from vegetables, I say in most vegetables, it's probably 50% are coming from fiber, right? So if you're eating your leafy green vegetables, peppers, tomatoes, like all of that, all vegetables have fiber, and it's going to be easily absorbed and digestible fiber. So you can see, again, in things that are sort of processed, they have a lot. I'll take the tortillas we eat, right? So we do carb balanced tortillas, and part of what makes them quote unquote carb balanced is that a good majority of the carbohydrates come from fiber, right? So yes, that is fiber, but it's still it's still processed, right? It's still processed to get into a tortilla. So our bodies still, in my opinion, don't absorb that as well as vegetables. So if you want, again, more bang for your buck, when we're looking at carbohydrates, we have a lot of people in our group too that are like, my carbs are still too high and my protein's still a little bit too low. If you focus on getting vegetables first, like I do this, you guys, I'm admittingly not a great vegetable eater, but if I make myself eat my vegetables first and then my protein and then I add anything else on, most of the time, by the time I get to the later parts of it, I'm like, it's not even possible to, hi cat, it's not even possible to sort of overeat the other parts of it because I'm so full that I'm like, I don't want to eat anymore, right? And so that's the beauty of fiber, is that it keeps you full. And again, you guys, if we're eating vegetables, we're going to go back to, you're getting the micronutrients, right? What other nutrition are you getting with your macronutrients? Because that is going to play a big role in how you feel, how healthy you are. And remember, you guys, fiber binds to things that your body is trying to get rid of. So if you're this is a total side note, but like if you're in a process of losing fat, you need fiber to draw it out of your body, okay? The other cool fact, hi Phyllis, is that, what is it, 50%? What's the number of, this is a fun stat that I don't think anybody ever knows, but when you're losing...
It's just your breath.
Yeah, when you're losing...
I think it's 80%.
Yeah, when you're losing body fat, 80% of that fat is actually expelled through your breath.
So via carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
And I think if there's one common theme we've seen, especially over the last 2.5 years via the world that we've been working through, is our breathing habits are super shallow. They're very chest heavy, right? And for a lot of you guys is, I mean, easy for me to say right now as I'm coughing, I think we should do, love to see your guys' thoughts regarding just a simple kind of almost like a breathing assessment / tutorial, right? Because so many of the people that we work with, the magic bullet for them is literally getting them to breathe properly, right? Because we sit so much, we're usually in a heightened state, we're underslept, we're overworked, yet we're in a heightened anxious type of spot on here, so we don't get proper gas exchange. And so just like Courtney said, is 80%, pretty sure it's 80, don't quote me on that.
It's a high
it's a high percentage is expelled via carbon monoxide, right? And so for most of us, the assessments that we've had at our facility, so many are shallow exhalers. Like we breathe in and then we small exhale. So we don't have any gas exchange, which in turn, we're not actually expelling and getting rid of that. And if a large majority of that is coming by me exhaling, but I'm not getting a full exhalation, yet again, I'm not allowing myself to expel that. In addition, how many of you guys also are avid aerobic junkies, right? If I'm not breathing under normal circumstances properly, now all of a sudden I add an elevated heart rate onto that, I'm really not going to get that gas exchange. And then how many, we also see somebody in our facility, we focus so much on increasing performance and longevity and everything else, is on the sense of just simply improving your breathing and improving essentially your oxygen intake and exhalation. You automatically get fitter because you're actually taking in more oxygen and you're expending it better, right? Like, yet again, for you chronic type people out there, we saw this question a couple weeks ago of how do I get more flexible? If you're not breathing properly, your body is acidic because of carbon monoxide. So you can stretch until you're blue in the face, but your body's not going to let it go because your tissues are so rigid and locked down. So, I mean, if there's one thing that we try to get across to people to understand is your body's a system that everything works and communicates and talks. Right? It's not just like, that's my big toe down there. And you know, it does. It's like your big toe literally coordinates to like your left arm, or your hip coordinates to across the body. Everything literally talks and communicates, right? Like your liver has to function in order for you to have good toxicity processes, right? Like your stomach has to digest, your heart has to contract, your lungs like the system works all together as we go through this. And if we can start to understand that generalizing or compartmentalizing things, it does us wrong, right? So if we can start to understand, if I give this system the appropriate benefit, it's also going to feed this system over here, and I don't have to work so hard, right? Like if there's one thing that we have tried, and I think it's just on the essence of as we get older, there's that side of, why do we have to work so hard to get these results, right? What we try to preach with all our athletes is the side of, well, what would it feel like to not have to work for 8 hours and get 4 hours of pay? What if we could in turn work for 4 hours and get 8 hours of pay, right? Like that to me sounds a lot smarter. So instead of working against ourselves, really see the simplicity of all this and see how we can formulate this plan so it helps the entire system function accordingly.
Yeah. Well, maybe next week, you guys, maybe we'll do breath work at this live show. I think that would be cool. So what's interesting is like I came from breath work like as a facilitator for like an emotional piece, right? So more of the meditation, more of the emotional side of it. But then I realized obviously how much better my physical body felt, right? And then not long after that, Brandon was taking a course. Why are you leaning away?
My eyesight again. I'm waiting for Jen to call me out.
Brandon was taking a course on functionality of athletes and getting people in the right position when they lift. And it was really interesting too, because I mean, I realized I didn't breathe correctly. I still don't. Like I still breathe up because that was sort of my like my home, and a lot of us do that. And so he had me do some stuff of, can you even breathe out? And like mentally I couldn't push my belly out because I had sucked it in for my whole life because I didn't like my body, right? So it's really interesting, but there's so much cool stuff with breath. One of my favorite things to do, my absolute favorite things to do, so when I do breath work, emotional breath work, it's a belly chest exhale. So it's so when I finish a CrossFit WOD and I'm breathless, mostly when I'm alone, otherwise everyone thinks I'm dying, is I'll lay down and breathe like that for 3 or 4 minutes, and you get up and you feel incredible, right? Like you've actually exhaled all the stress, you've exhaled all of the stuff, like you've let your body relax, and you can realize that in a heightened state when you don't think you can breathe, you actually can breathe, right? And I think one of the coolest things about breath is that our bodies, like if you think about this, like our bodies are so incredible. I was doing a meditation yesterday and I just had this like realization again of, like our bodies do so much, right? We rest, we digest. For goodness sakes, like if you're a woman, your body made a baby, or maybe made a baby or 2 or 10.
As the capability of it.
Yeah, like we didn't do anything. Like you don't get pregnant and go, how do I do this, right? So like trust your body, and if you give it what it needs, it will do what it's supposed to do, right? So I lost my train of thought. But anyway, but like on the breath side is that when you can, oh, I know what I was gonna say. Your body does it for itself most of the time. But then you can take over your breath, right? Like you can take over the breath pattern. You can choose to do that. And when you realize physically, mentally, emotionally what breath can do for you, it's incredible. So next week we're gonna actually be in the mountains. We're gonna be on vacation, if you will. So maybe that would be a fun time to do a breathwork session. So if you guys want breathwork, if you're watching the replay, we've already seen some yeses. If you want us to do some breath tutorial next week, let us know. We'll post that. So if you're gonna do it, try to give yourself like that 45 minutes to do it. But we can do some other stuff too. So there's my little tangent on how important breath is. All right.
Well, and I think in addition to that, you guys, is one thing that we really hit home in the 8-week program is state. Right, is trying to help us understand in different states we're different people, right? And so often we get trapped, especially when it comes to diet and physical change and wanting to have these goals and everything else. We get trapped into states of disempowerment, anger, frustration, whatever that may be. Stress, right? And so your breath, like the thing we try to help people understand is 3 things control your state. First is your physiology, how you stand, how you move, your facial expressions, whether you're slumping down, whether your shoulders are back, how you're breathing, right? What you focus on in the language in which you're using to either express or talk to yourself in. And so oftentimes the first thing is getting you to change your physiology. Well, if you can learn, and because everything can be taught, if you can learn to bring yourself awareness to how you're breathing, right? Because when you're angry, when you're upset, when you're sad, you have to breathe certain ways to exert certain chemical responses in your body, right? And so if we can bring awareness to that by good fundamental breathing practices, for one, it will help change your state. So if you wear the crown of I'm an anxious person, I'm always in anxiety, you know what, I'm in anger, I'm in sad, whatever it may be, whatever that hat you may wear on that is you can also use this as a tool to change and shift your physiology, which in turn will change your state, right? So it's a great tool, not only on the essence of, yet again, helping in this process of the physical change you're wanting to make, but yet again, how often do you get upset when you're driving in traffic? How often do you maybe get upset at a coworker? How often do you get sad? How often do you feel anxious? And if you can learn to shift and adjust your focus and your direction by just bringing awareness and grabbing a hold of the sense of I don't like the word control, but I can create these sensations by just good fundamental breathing practices.
Yeah, and we're seeing it inside of our group. I had a call last week with one of our clients that's doing the one-to-one coaching with me, and she had a lot of stress come up at work and found out a lot of things might be changing massively. And she said, the old me would have gone into constriction and worry and stress. And she's like, you know what? I actually just pulled over. I did like 5 minutes of just breathing and thinking about positive thoughts, and she said, I don't even know what's going to happen. So it didn't do any good to stress about it. So she was able to like stop for a second, have awareness around what was going on, change her state, choose her emotional response, choose her thoughts, and then just go on. And she's like, it was crazy. She's like, I never would have responded like that. And it was so cool to see, right? Like this is 3 weeks into the program of already having these aha moments and putting them into practice. So it's super cool to see that. So again, that's what we want you guys all to understand is, yes, like diet is important and not eating too much mercury is important, but when you really lean into these different parts of it is when you're really going to start to see those big changes. Okay?
I think not eating too much mercury is an important.
You know what I mean, though. You're less likely to die from mercury poisoning than you are to be stress drained. Is that fair?
I think perfect segue. You're on fire again. You did this last week. Speaking of stress and anxiousness, we're going to talk about the body scan. All right, so many of you guys, we saw a lot of feedback both in this group and through a lot of the OTF threads of the transformation challenge that started this week, that a lot of you guys got your in-body scan as your initial markers for that essential challenge, and saw a lot of anxiousness. We'll use that. A lot of anxiousness surrounding.
Yeah,
a lot of judgment, a lot of anxiousness, and a lot of uncertainty regarding those numbers. Right. And so the first thing that we want to that our belief is when it comes to basically anything, you guys, and we've owned our own brick and mortar facility for 12 years, right? Like we've done a million different things over the course of having our own facility, but especially being coaches for 20 years now.
It's been like 25.
We've been around essentially a lot of the challenge format, a lot of those kind of things a lot, right? But for us, when it comes to transformation, you guys, our view on there isn't just what changes physically, right? Like you making a change physically does not transform. It's who you are and everything, the essence of you is really what that transformation comes from, right? Like that's like I've seen a million times over that you get a 6-pack, but you don't change your view process, you don't change who you are, you don't change your philosophy on life, you don't grow and aspire to a better version of yourself. That's not transformation. That's just you spending some time to change yourself physically, but that doesn't transform who you are. Our goal, our mission is to raise the bar and raise everyone up to the highest level in which they want to aspire to be, right? And like if that's getting a 6-pack, awesome. If that's doing an Ironman, phenomenal. If that's going and playing with your kids, great. If that's also making sure that you're contributing and you're helping everyone else around you and you're raising up the bar around everyone else around you by sheer proximity, even better, right? Like, so I think on the first essence, if you did that, you did get that scan, you guys, is allow yourself to yet again, what we tried to kind of point out is if that triggered you, right? If that was a kind of a slap across the face and that triggered you a little bit, ask yourself, yet again, take a step away, get out of the muck and grud of it, but ask yourself, why? Why am I triggered by this? What am I bothered by this? How is this influencing me right now? What is my interpretation of this?
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. I think that's a bigger piece of like how does that make you feel, and what stories does it create that you think you believe, right? If my body fat's higher than I think, I'm a bad person, or I'm, think about what, like, it's not the thing, it's what that thing made you believe and feel and see. So ask yourself those deeper questions of like, well, what does this mean to me, right? And I get it. I was tied to, and some of you guys have heard the story, but like I was always tied to weight and all the things. And I had a mentor back in the day when I was like 21. I was married back then, right before my wedding. He had me do an underwater one, and they completely screwed it up. And it came back that I was like closer to obese than I was to being fit. And like, it was awful. Like it threw me, like I've literally never had my body fat done since then because of what it did to me mentally and emotionally. But it had nothing to do with that number, right? It had to do with my interpretation of what that meant, right? That I was lazy and I was out of shape and that while all the things that I was doing wasn't working, right? It spun me into that other side. So think about like what's actually coming up for you, right? And then allow yourself to like be with it, right? Like don't push it away. I think that's the biggest problem. Not the biggest problem. It's one of the things that we see is that we're all taught not to feel, right? Just push the things down. Don't think about it. Don't feel it. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Don't think about it. Don't feel it. Just leave it. Just make it go away, right? Versus, okay, well, why am I feeling this? Can I be with this sensation? Can I sit with it? What can I learn from this? Where do I get to grow? How do I get to move through these triggers, right? It's anything you feel is not bad. It's when we don't feel it and we don't look at it for long periods of time that it shows up and it triggers us and it causes all of these other things, right? And then focus on what are the thoughts. Like, are your thoughts like, oh my gosh, I got to crash diet, I need to do X, Y, Z. Like, what's going on when you get that information? And then how do we use that? Now, how do we use it as a positive, and how do we use it as a catalyst to push us into growing and changing and becoming a better version of ourselves without doing it from a place of fear? So let's talk about fear a little bit.
Well, I think on the first sense of that, you guys is understanding that there's no bad feelings. Right. There's no negative feelings. There's no necessarily good feelings.
There's higher vibrating feelings and there's lower vibrating feelings, but they're not good or bad.
But at the same time, what is a feeling? Right? Like all a feeling is a sensation that I label. Right? Like all that is literally my nervous system, my sensation, my interpretation, whatever that may be. And whatever I label that is what it is. Right? And at the same sense, have you ever mislabeled something? Have you ever misinterpreted something? Right? Like, I mean, I could tell you as a million times as an athlete, right? Like I've been nervous, I've been anxious, I've been these kind of things. But I've also made the mistake of feeling anxious and nervous and then labeling it and making the association of, oh, this is a bad thing. Me being nervous and me being anxious, that means I'm not prepared for this. And lo and behold, when I got out to go onto the floor and compete or do my sport, all of a sudden the story of I'm not ready for this came true because of what I believed all of a sudden came to fruition.
Thoughts become things.
Yes. And so it's on the same sense of that is if you really look at even just anxiousness and nervousness and then tie them what's happening physiologically to like a simulator or like a not a stimulus, but like a unit that can actually sense those things, like physiologically, excitement and nervousness are actually very similar to their physiological patterns, what happened in the body. But how we label and interpret that is what creates that reality, right? So it's on the same sense as, oh no, these feelings aren't good, right? I see that in body scan. Oh no, I feel bad. I feel negative. I feel, okay, well, where is that coming from, right? Where are these stories coming from? Are those stories yours? Well, like there's a million ways that we go through this to help navigate the waters to understand that 99% of the stuff we carry around with actually isn't real, and it's actually more likely isn't yours. But more importantly, it's on the sense of, well, do you have all the information? Maybe you're looking at this wrong. Maybe I don't have all the information. Maybe I'm just misinterpreting this thing. Maybe I mislabeled it, right? Like, what's your state, right? Like, if I'm in an angry state and all of a sudden I get that in-body scan, I'm probably going to interpret that even though if I may lose 10 pounds and I may be down to 3% body fat or whatever, I'm still going to be probably angry because that's the mode I'm in to view, right? So it's on the sense of what is your state? What are you viewing? How are these things coming from, right? Like so often it's because we're in reactionary mode as opposed to in a place of, that's interesting. Maybe there's something to think about, right? And oftentimes it's coming from that place of fear.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, we tend to all judge ourselves, right? Like if your best friend showed you their scan and you could just look at it and go, okay, well, these are numbers. Awesome. And like, maybe your body fat now is 30%, but it used to be 40. That's awesome. Right. But like, so look at it without judgment and try to give yourself some grace, right? And just know it's where you are currently. Love and own where you are, right? Like we always say, like you have to love where you are. People are like, I don't want to love where I am. Like loving and owning where you are doesn't mean that you don't want to shift into different patterns, right? But let's go back to the fear piece for a second. So I think most of us I'll say this and I'll stick to this for the rest of my life. Dieting is fear, right? Dieting is fear that if I don't diet my body or my, whatever, like my body's going to look a different way, feel a different way. It's not going to perform, whatever.
We said I need to diet because my markers from my doctor came back to this.
Right.
So like there's a million different ways to go down this other than just the aesthetic part of what you look at.
Right. Like it's fear of not being in the health that you desire, right? So it's like, okay, I've got to do something restrictive now versus I've got to do something abundant, right? And abundant thinking is like, okay, this is where I am. What would it feel like to love myself into the place that I want to become, right? And so loving yourself into the place you want to become is like, okay, well, how do I actually nourish my body? What's actually going on? Can I look at what I'm doing in the gym and decide if it's serving me, right? Can I look at the number, right? I think the other thing that's interesting is we all have this, everyone, I believe, women especially though, but I think guys do this too, of like, there's a number that we want the scale to say. Where did that number come from? Right? Because for all of us, it's a different number. But like, where did that number come from? And when did you decide to marry your self-worth to the number on that scale or the number of that body fat or the number of pounds you can back squat, right? Like, where did we come up with those stories, right? Because for most of us, it wasn't from a place of love. It wasn't from a place of like, this is the healthiest, happiest version of me. It's like, oh, that was my weight in high school, or that was my skinniest, or that was like, whatever. Like, think about even where that came from and how do you disconnect from that story so that you can really start to shift. Am I doing these things out of fear, or am I doing them because I really want to live as the healthiest, most abundant, happiest, joyful human that I can be while I'm experiencing this earth? Because that's a way different feeling than I got to diet so I can fit into a size whatever pair of jeans, right? I promise you, just feel that energy for a minute. Like healthy, happy, abundant human, size 4.
Well, I mean, that thing we run into a lot with a lot of the clients that we work with is the results to get there are probably the same, right? Like the actions to get there are probably the same, right? But the end process and the end outlook of what I'm trying to accomplish are two different things.
And the journey.
And the journey and the feeling and all the other things that I'm feeling along the way are going to be massively different, right? I mean, I can't tell. I lived into this on the sense of like, I can't be happy until. Well, happiness is a trained thing. Who's deciding whether or not you get to be happy? You are, right? So why not in the process of this? And I don't care. And we talked about this a lot on Monday of going through the macro program. Is I don't care who you are. You are never going to essentially arrive, because by the time you get to that version of the person that you're striving for now, you're going to grow and you're going to be looking for the next version of yourself. Right? Because growth is a human need. Like, we're either growing or we're dying. We never stay complacent where we're at, right? And so if we can understand that and maybe shift yet again our outlook and our viewpoint on this of, you know what can I do but also enjoy it? That's a different question of what can I do to lose weight? Yeah. Right? Because so often, and especially in this group, I've had conversations regarding people of, well, you're so focused on what you want to lose that you're not even asking yourself, what am I going to gain? Right? Like, just think about that for a second. When's the last time you got to focus on the outcome and the things in which you desire, not the things in which you don't want to have happen? That's just as much of a taught thing, right? Like, I can tell you, there was a time over the last 2 years, I had to remove myself from social media. I had to get off all the platforms. I had to do these things because what I was doing was nothing but focusing on the negative. Everything's getting shut down. My kids can't go to school. All these things are happening. We have to walk around with all the coverings on our face. We can't go out and function. We can't go see my parents. We can't, all these things were having massive effects on me. But what I was focusing on is what came up more in my life. And so when I was focusing on all the negative, that's all I saw, right? So if I'm only focusing on the things that I want to lose, I'm sure it's not going to see the good in things that I'm gaining, right? And so yet again, if I can shift that focus, the actions will be the exact same thing. That was really high pitch. The actions will be the same thing, but the outlook and the receptiveness of how you go about receiving that, I promise, will be two completely different things, and it will be longer lasting and sustainable at the same time.
Yeah. So Kat just said, when she started, she's a member of our gym, and she said when she started, a pull-up was a big thing, and now pull-ups are no big deal. So it's like, what's next, right? You're always growing, and Kat, it's a muscle up. So we're gonna get a muscle up next. So that's super fun. But I think that's a really big thing, you guys, of how can we shift the way that we look at this? How can we shift? And I know for me, physically, I chased this certain body that I thought I wanted that would make me happy, and it never did. And when I let go of that, and I was like, well, I get to be happy, and I get to create my life, and I get to do these things, and I get to look at what my body can do and not just what it looks like. Lo and behold, I ended up physically with what I was chasing that whole time, right? And so it's just starting to go, can I look at this differently? Can I shift the way that I'm coming at this so that the process is more fun? And you get to decide today to be happy, right? I always love, in this exact moment right now, how much is really wrong in your life? Right now, this moment, not what you're worried about, not what happened yesterday, this exact moment, what's really wrong? It's not usually that much. Okay.
Well, I think one more thing, you guys, I think ties into this, I just came to mind, is on the essence of a relationship, right? Most don't know my backstory and everything else. Courtney shared a couple of times that obviously she's been married prior, but for me, I was in a long-term relationship with my high school and college sweetheart. That relationship fizzled out, didn't work out. And after that point, I would cause me an immense amount of pain, caused me all these things. And I was under the standpoint, I don't think I'll ever want an actual serious long-term relationship because what I related that to was pain, right? And so often what we try to look for, and I've had so many friends, and especially a lot of the female friends and stuff like that, they get sucked into the side of, well, I need a relationship, I need a commitment, I need these things to make me happy, right? And then what I had to learn is once I started just running my race and going along my journey and really going through the process of understanding that I'm happy as all get out with who I am, right? I'm never going to settle as far as I'm always trying to aspire for more, but I'm really, really happy with who I am. And then lo and behold, once I got to look around me at that time frame, I got to see her right next to me and seeing wow, we're on the same page. We're all on these same things, right? I didn't need her on the other side of validating essentially who I am. I got to be the best version of myself, and she just got to be an additional icing on top of the cake to that, right? But I think so often we're looking for the external thing. What Courtney always talks about, we're looking for the external thing to solve an internal problem, right? And I mean, the biggest part of shift, you guys, yes, we go over all the nutritional fundamentals and everything else. The biggest victory that we saw today was literally somebody empowering themselves with the first time they've ever wore a cut-off t-shirt to the gym in ever, because they feel comfortable with themselves, right? Like they feel comfortable enough with themselves finally that they allowed themselves to actually wear a sleeveless t-shirt to the gym because they stopped essentially judging themselves, themselves. Right? But I think it's on the essence of that, you guys, is this journey is far more than just the nutrition, far more than the things you eat, the things you, all these things encompass and comprise of you. But if we can come from yet again, making our own bed and understanding of I got to make my own bed, and then if I make my own bed, then it's going to essentially span out from there. But we can't solve essentially an internal problem with an external solution.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys, and Kat, I love Happy Starts Now, and yes, Phyllis, like, you have to love yourself or you can love anybody else. Like, you have to be taking care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else, right? But I think we sometimes just get confused in, like, what does taking care of ourselves really look like? What does it feel like? Because most of us haven't been taught that, right? Like, most of us, that's not something that we were taught, and it's not something that we know how to do until we start to surround ourselves with people like people in this group where you're like, oh, wow, that's really what this looks like. I saw an episode, the rapper said he had a dream to be meeting his successful, and yes, I can't see the rest of it. Hi, Jen! Hold on, you get to see me really up close. And his self told him, you just met me, you gotta go live it. Yeah, exactly, you guys, like, we're already the best version of yourself. You've just put all these, like, shackles and chains and wrong beliefs and all this crap on top of yourself. Like, you just get to release that stuff, and you're like, what was the child version of me? Like, the happy, like, if you look at kids, like, we have fairly little kids, so we've gotten to observe this, like, they're picking up rocks and throwing sticks and making, talking to their imaginary friends, and it's like, there's not a care in the world. We all still have that, right? It's just we've chosen to put ourselves in these boxes. Okay, we should go on. That's a little bit of a tangent, but it was a good tangent, I think. Hello, Reese.
I mean, that was essentially the body scan was again kind of the end portion of that.
Oh, okay. Any other questions? We'll give you guys a second. I don't know what time it is. Do you guys have any other questions we can answer? I was going to say ask. It's been one of those weeks, you guys. So I got up not yesterday, but the day before at like 2:15 in the morning because our little one woke up, and I never went back to sleep. And yesterday I was like, I think I'm just brain dead. So luckily it wasn't the day of the macro seminar. So let's talk about that really quick, you guys. We did macro seminar on Monday. It's 2-hour presentation, PowerPoint. I think it was really, really, really amazing. We've had a few people reach out and say, I missed it. Can I still do something? When are you going to do it again? So we decided, you guys, we're going to offer that to you guys. You can get the recording. So you'll have the recording, which is all the goodness, all the question and answer that went as part of it. There's a macro spreadsheet calculation that Brandon updated that works incredibly well. There's a video, thanks, Kat. There's a video of going through, like, how do you actually use an app? And then you get support from us. So if you guys want that, let me know. I'll give you the link. It's $97 for it. You have it for the rest of your life. And again, our biggest thing, you guys, is education, right? So you might watch it now, watch it again. Almost everybody from Monday night was like, I got to go watch this again. But watch it now, take action, right? In that seminar, we talked about assess, act, and then reevaluate or evaluate. So you get to do that, and you get to have that forever and have that knowledge and go back. I mean, we both have, we were talking about this morning, like how many coaches we've had, like physical coaches, mentors, emotional coaches, right? Like we've had all of the things and everything that they've taught us. And I can go back and look at stuff that my coaches taught me 3 years ago and watch a video and be like, I didn't hear that, right? Because as you grow and as you, as you, like, what do they say, reading or learning.
Every time you read a book, it's a different book.
Yeah, but learning is just remembering, right? Or it's like, have you ever picked up a book and been like, why am I reading this today? And you get that one nugget and you're like, oh, that's why. Or podcast or whatever. Like, so again, with knowledge, you get access to that forever. So you can go back 30 days into your journey and go, I think they said something about that. What was that? So if you guys want that, let us know. You get it on demand. So literally you can click it, download it, and jump into it right now. But yeah, we appreciate you guys. If there's no other questions, I think we'll jump off and go see what our kids are doing. It's really quiet in our house, so we have a snow day here. And it's really quiet in our house, which might be a bad thing.
One thing I think that kind of just came to mind is I've seen a couple of people talk about, yet again, I think this ties into that fear category a little bit, is I've done this one thing for X amount of time, right? I've done this one diet, I've done this one way of eating, I've done this one exercise program, I've done whatever. and I'm really afraid that it's no longer going to work. Or I'm really afraid of changing. I'm really afraid of doing something else.
Or I know it's not working anymore, but I'm afraid of letting go of it.
All the signs there, it's not applicable to my lifestyle anymore now. But this is the only thing I know. And so, in addition to this, you guys, is I guess the basis of this live today is so much, 80% at least of what we have seen to come through is mental, emotional, and psychological. Like the plan, I don't like whether it's macros, whether it's, hand measurement, whether it's Mediterranean diet, whether it's keto, whatever it may be. They all have their place, right? Like it's not, yet again, we have our certain stipulated things that we've seen work really, 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 really well in 20 years of doing this as coaches. But on the other essence of it is my lifestyle, now being 38 with 2 kids.
You almost had 3. I was like, we don't have 3 kids.
3, I was thinking 3 businesses, 2 kids, right? Like all my lifestyle now compared to when I was in my younger to mid 20s, when I was able to, train 3 times a day, go out all night long, do different things or whatever that may be, is vastly different, right? So my lifestyle, my day-to-day plan has also have to change and adjust, right? Like like so often we get so married to like, well, this is the only thing I know will ever work. Well, what if that option's not, like 2 years ago, you were if you were married to going to the gym 5 days a week, and then 2 years ago, all of a sudden the world got shut down and going to the gym was no longer an option, what'd you do? Right? Like if all of a sudden, well, I have to go to the gym in order for me to get my exercise in, but now all of a sudden that's not an option. So now for the next 2 years, I'm not going to do anything. And unfortunately, we've seen that, right? Like this, the only way I know how to do this is by doing this one thing. Well, I hate to tell you, yet again, that's a version of either growing or dying, right? Like that's an essence of evolution, right? Like, can you learn to grow and expand and create, yet again, move from, Courtney talks about this all the time, is moving from moving away from rules to boundaries, right? Like, can you learn of like, okay, if I want to give myself the gift of health, which incorporates movement, exercise, nourishment, whatever that may be. Okay, right now I'm able to go to the gym. Okay, if that's not an option today, can I go for a walk? Can I play downstairs with my kids? Can I go, run out in my backyard? Whatever that may be.
Can I do a bunch of burpees?
Can I do a bunch of, like, are there other ways and other processes for you to still give yourself? And I say give yourself because so often I see the words of I have to or I'm supposed to, and I'm sorry, but that doesn't work. Right? Like it doesn't work when, yet again, if I hear somebody say I need to, or I know I'm supposed to, or I should, I know it's not going to last, right? Because it's not a must in your system. It's not a must. I must go work out today because I feel better when I do it, or I have better cognitive function, or I must go play with my kids because I want to give them that time of connection.
I still think must for me is sticky. It's still get to. Right? I get to work out. Yeah. I get to work out. I get to play with my kids. I get to do all of the things in my business that maybe I don't love, right? But like you get to do those things. And Brandon says it a must in like
on a side of not demanding.
Yeah. Right. So what he's talking about, and I think this is something good to chat about for a second, is that a lot of times people are like interested in their outcomes and interested in their goals. Like, well, it'd be nice to be healthier. It'd be nice to be fitter. It'd be nice to do this. But they're not really committed to like, this is it. I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of looking at myself and not loving the way I feel. I'm tired of these numbers. I'm tired of my doctor telling me that if I don't change something, my life is going to go downhill. Like when you hit that point, that's a must. And that's what Brandon means by must. Like this is no longer an option. Like I have hit that point where I'm done and whatever it takes, I'm going to change my life and it's going to start today. That's a must, right?
Well, that's a choice.
It's also still a get to, right? Though
yes.
And that's what I think for a lot of people, you guys, is that stop thinking. Now you're gonna get me all fired up. I said that when I get really excited, I get really high pitched, and I should stop trying to do that. But like, stop thinking about like maybe I should. What if I did? Maybe I wait. Like, just do the thing. Jump. Like I am a huge commit first, figure it out later person. If you do that, even if you fail, you're gonna learn something. So like, stop waiting for that next time. Stop waiting for the perfect thing. Stop waiting for maybe could that work for me. Just do the darn thing and see what happens. Because even if you fail, you're gonna grow and you're gonna be a different version of yourself. So That's our lovely push off the edge today, is like, stop thinking about whatever, and I don't care if it's your nutrition, it's your job, it's that person you want to ask out, like whatever it is, just go do the thing, because thinking about it is creating it's creating fear, and it's creating doubt inside of your system.
Well, and I mean, I think this ties into a little bit. I mean, I had a conversation last night with one of the girls, one of our young athletes that's 16, you know, and we're working through different things with her regarding all of this, and we had a large conversation, and she's a very high action, very successful athlete, but she also wears perfectionist like a crown, right? And we were talking about on the sense of, do you feel you have to have the right answer before you even ask a question, right? Before you even put yourself out to do, and she's a very good athlete, but even she has the sense of like, well, I don't know if I could step out there and even just try that athletic endeavor if I don't know I'm going to succeed, right? And so the reason why I'm talking about that, you guys, is on the sense of how many of you guys are parents, or how many of you guys are role models, or how many of you guys have other people in your life that perhaps, trust me, us having 2 daughters, especially the older ones, in a good phase right now where she tends to not necessarily pay attention and everything else, but I surely know that she is watching and she is listening, right? She may not always hear, right? Like she has a pretty good way of choosing the things that she wants to hear.
She's
but
like you.
But I know she's always listening, right? And she's always observing,
They're always watching.
right? And I think that's the other important part of this, you guys. If you are a parent, or you are in a role at your job, or you are a role in whatever line life, and you, I mean, I'm a believer that we all are leaders, right? I'm a big believer that we all are all leaders. You may not necessarily have the hat of a manager or whatever that may be, but you are still a leader in whatever you do.
Everybody's leading somebody all the time.
And so our big philosophy, you guys, when it comes to leadership is lead from the front, set the example, and lead by example, right? But at the same time frame is, if you have your patterns already that are ingrained in you of protective and not taking action and always wanting to do those things, or seeing the negative before they even happen, or wanting to have all the answers before you take action, and you don't necessarily aren't a fan of those things of yourself, you are also passing those down to the people around you. Yet again, one of my favorite quotes of all time is, what you do speaks so loud, I can't hear the words that come out of your mouth, right? And so it's just that sense is, trust me, I've been around a lot of coaches in my day. I've been around a lot of really, really high-level coaches, and I've been around a lot of high-level coaches that spout all the mumbo-jumbo that will motivate you in a second, but then you turn around and you're like, you have no integrity because you don't live what you speak, right? Allow yourself to go through this process, not only for you, but yet again, and I know she can speak to this 100 times over, is maybe going through this process is actually going to allow you to be better for the other people around you at the same time frame.
Maybe it's not even about you.
It's not even about you.
Okay, on that note, you guys, yes, cat selective hearing. We all have it. It's just, if you guys are parents, so we have 2 little kids, my random side note, the littlest is me, and the oldest is Brandon, and you watch them, and I'm like, oh, that's like watching us, for some really good things, and some things where you're like, the oldest one pushes the little one's buttons, and he does that to me, and then it's just funny. But anyway, you guys, we appreciate you. Let us know what questions you have. Drop a comment, put a breath in the comments if you want to do breath work next week. Again, there'll be more breath work, but if that would be something cool for next week's live show, let's do that. And then just to drop a little nugget, we're going to do another 3-day event where we dive into all of this stuff for you guys the following week. So the week of the 15th, so it's going to be 15th, 16th, 17th. So put those on your calendar. I think those will be at noon. So be ready for that. Yay, Katie. Yay. Breath, breath, breath. Okay, awesome. And then last or our only ask, if you have friends that you know would benefit from this group, please invite them, right? Like, we can only get to the people that know that this group exists and that can get this information. So if you have friends, if you have coworkers, if your husband, your wife, invite them to this group so that we can love on them, pour into them. It's always more fun with friends.
If you're getting value out of this, you guys, you know, the biggest thing, honestly, we appreciate your guys' feedback and all the love that you guys share. But the absolute best thing that we want to do, you guys, is take this mission. Like, that's the reason why we started this, is to really abolish not just the sense of like on nutrition and all those kind of things, but on just a whole element of life, and making, yet again, our goal is to raise the bar of our entire environment and everyone else around us, you know. And if you're getting benefit from this, you guys, you got a nugget out of it, whatever it may be, share this, tag this, send it to a friend, invite them, whatever that may be. That's the best thing that we can ask from you.
Appreciate you guys. All right, I see lots of breaths, so I think we'll plan on that. But have an amazing, amazing Wednesday. If you're in Colorado, enjoy the snow. I love the snow. So we'll see you guys next week.
Don't hold your breath.
Don't hold your breath.